Welcome back to the LF Press podcast. Thank you once again for joining us. If you are enjoying these, don't forget to hit subscribe. We're streaming all the time. Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, YouTube, and of course over at lfpress.com. I'm your host, Lynzee Barnett, and I am joined once again by City Hall London Free Press reporter Megan Stacey. Megan, how you doing today?
Good, back again. I can't believe there's so much City Hall drama to talk about.
I'm so glad you just used the word drama because that's exactly how I would describe what's going on. So, pretty hot news from over the weekend in the city of London. In case anybody wasn't downtown or was away, I don't really know, and you missed, there was an anti-lockdown rally held in Victoria Park by a pretty infamous guy at this point named Chris Sky, and a lot of people turned out to this rally, and that included a city councillor. Michael Van Holst was there and spoke at the rally. So the latest news now is London Mayor Ed Holder has brought in an integrity commissioner to investigate the actions of Michael Van Holst. So there's a lot to unpack here, Megan. We need to talk about this. So first of all, what do you think this was the tipping point? Because there's been some other actions from Councillor Van Holst over the last 3 weeks that maybe could have warranted some action before Mayor Ed Holder waited. Why do you think now was the time?
That's a really good question, Lynzee. I was expecting that we might see something like this from the mayor or from another member of council even earlier. Like you said, I think it even goes back months, even close to the start of the pandemic, where Councillor Van Holst has, been questioning some of the public health measures, things like masking, even lockdowns to a certain degree. And now, of course, he's really butting heads with the rest of council with regards to this COVID-19 vaccine mandate that applies to staff at City Hall. There's another policy, and now it applies to councillors as well. So, what we're hearing from the mayor is that speaking at this rally, Councillor Van Holst was essentially the opening act for this GTA activist who is, traveling the province and holding these rallies to protest vaccine mandates and other things. I guess we can say certainly not a fan of masks or vaccines in that crowd. And so the mayor said, this was a tipping point. He's out here publicly, refuting and really suggesting that council's policy is not the way to go, right? Encouraging people to join this organization he's created and really not upholding, that council policy that's already been passed and approved. You're requiring a mandate, a COVID-19 vaccine mandate, and requiring councillors to be vaccinated unless they've got a medical or human rights exemption. So yeah, the mayor used words like, a tipping point. He said, he takes no delight in filing this complaint to the integrity commissioner, but that to him, that was the line. And so the integrity commissioner investigates alleged violations of council's code of conduct. And so that's really what it comes down to here. The mayor is complaining to the integrity commissioner and suggesting that Councillor Van Holst has violated that code of conduct. So the code of conduct, requires politicians to represent the council and their office, in a proper way. There's a lot of different pieces to that, but one of the main issues is representing council decisions in a way that upholds, respect for the office of council. And so that's what Mayor Holder is using as his justification for filing this complaint. He says that the threshold for him, was seeing Councillor Van Holst at this rally, speaking to people and not respecting that council decision. And that's what's driven this complaint to the integrity commissioner, about that rally and about Councillor Van Holst's actions in the last couple of weeks, and specifically with regards to his speech at the rally.
I have to ask, what are the repercussions that Councillor Van Holst is facing depending on what the integrity commissioner comes back with?
Right. And so it's kind of interesting because typically those complaints to the integrity commissioner would be filed by a citizen. So it is possible that there are other complaints in addition to Mayor Holder's. I don't know that, but Mayor Holder's filed this complaint. And so the integrity commissioner will weigh that up and decide if he needs to investigate. If he does investigate, he can go through that inquiry process. That would involve talking to Mayor Holder, talking to Councillor Van Holst, doing that legal work that the integrity commissioner needs to do to come to a resolution position a decision. And then whatever he decides ends up back at council. So he can make recommendations. Really the furthest though that council could go in terms of a penalty or a punishment is docking Councillor Van Holst's pay for up to 90 days. So rolling back his paychecks for 3 months, that's about as far as they can go. There's no suspending him. There's not really, an option to kick him out. And so what comes back from the integrity commissioner could include a recommendation to dock his pay. And that's really the most that council can do. They could couple that with, reprimand, sanctions, things like restricting Councillor Van Holst's access to City Hall, especially in this scenario where you've got mask mandates and trying to keep people safe with physical distancing and things like that. So they could couple, if there is, a finding from the integrity commissioner, again, that he's violated the code of conduct, they could look at some penalties, but, we're really not talking here about an option to remove him from office. Really, it's about that suspension of pay for up to 90 days. But I will say, that's kind of the legal, right? That's in the Municipal Act that all Ontario municipalities have to follow. And that's one element. But the other element, I think, is the political here, right? And that's why it is so interesting to see this step that Mayor Holder has taken, and taken quite publicly as well, because, he didn't have to do that. He can file a complaint and not broadcast it to the entire city, right? That's typically what happens, especially if you've got a citizen complaint. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of council deals with this, because up to now, and including Mayor Holder, there has seemed to be really limited appetite, to push back against what Michael Van Holst is doing or saying in council chambers or outside, right? So there's definitely, I think, some political play at work there. You've only seen really 2 councillors even push back at some of his statements in council chambers, which is most certainly bordering on misinformation, about vaccines. And so it'll be interesting to see, does Mayor Holder take a stronger stance in chambers as well? When COVID issues come up, and in a way, they're limited at City Council, obviously, because there's not a ton of public health decisions being made there. But, you look at something like a COVID-19 vaccine mandate or mask bylaw, and there could be some potential for, councillors and the mayor to say, all right, Ward 1 councillor, you've had your time, please sit down, to push back against some of those statements and against some of his action. You don't have to be, reading line by line through the Municipal Act in order to take a political stand against one of your colleagues, obviously, although that might not be a popular move. So we'll see if it happens.
I'm glad you brought up a lot of very valid points. I do want to touch on Mayor Ed Holder. You're right, did not have to go public with it. And I typically am somebody who veers away from the comment section, but he tweeted about his decision. And then I was reading some of the replies that he got. Now, this is kind of an interesting situation to see an elected official and speak out like this with regards to Michael Van Holst. And it's also kind of interesting that Councillor Van Holst is just kind of a little on an island by himself. Have you heard from any other councillors that have spoken about this, that have kind of backed the mayor? Because I know there's been issues over, like you said, the last couple of months. There's been a lot going on with Councillor Van Holst in the past few weeks. What are some of the other councillors saying at this point? Because there is definitely a divide happening here.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, it's something that I have been asking for the past couple of months. To me, I thought that some of the councillors may see some of Councillor Van Holst's previous decisions as that line, right? Here's the threshold. This is the line in the sand. We got to do something. For instance, he recently created this organization. He calls it the Order of Freedom. And that's, to back up his creed and in hopes that he'll get a human rights exemption to this council policy and he won't have to be vaccinated. And so on that website that he's created for this new organization, he claimed on Saturday at the rally that he has hundreds of members, hundreds of people who have essentially signed up on this website. And on that website, he talked about it seemed to suggest that other people could use this creed, this organization, to get around their own vaccine mandates. So that was a point, especially that I thought might be a threshold. I called a bunch of councillors and said, do you see a problem with this? And so there was really limited appetite, as I said, to do anything. And I think a lot of councillors have mentioned to me, just exactly as you said, it's kind of a political rarity to be pointing the finger at one of your colleagues, calling them out, and, really going on the attack like that. We haven't seen that. We haven't really heard that. Even some of the most outspoken counselors, Counselor Stephen Turner tried to take Counselor Van Holst on at one of the meetings where he was speaking about vaccines. And about the vaccine rollout. And Counselor Turner told me, I have try to have a policy not to, speak directly about my colleagues, right? People don't want to go on the attack if they don't have to. So I'm not hearing a ton of emphasis on maybe following in Mayor Holder's footsteps, that's for sure. But I also think, you hear from a lot of citizens and even from political experts who say, listen, something had to be done. Somebody has to take a stand of some sort here. And I think that's really why you see Mayor Holder filing this complaint to the Integrity Commissioner, because it's really the only route that council has, aside from the political that we discussed. The Integrity Commissioner is there to investigate council violations of the Code of Conduct, investigate allegations of unethical behavior. And so really, I think that's the only option. And I think Mayor Holder said, and we heard him say this week, it's my responsibility at this point to do something about this. He thought that was his role and that it was time to really do something. So as I said before, you could see other complaints landing before the Integrity Commissioner. It's even possible that some city councilors may have already filed that. They wouldn't always necessarily tell me that publicly. So it's possible that you've seen that, but I think, you got to this point and where clearly the mayor felt that this was the line, it had to be done, it had to be done now, and that it should be him, and he should let citizens of London know that he had done it, right? That some sort of action was taken because we have seen calls really from across the city, citizens saying, what are you going to do about this? We're in the middle of a public health crisis, and you've got a sitting city councilor, who's using his platform to spread anti-vaccination rhetoric, to question public health measures. And I think there is a belief among some that something had to be done about that. Obviously, you've got others who, I would say a small minority who believe that Michael Van Holst is the only one representing them on council. It's that's certainly a reality for some people in the city as well. So I'm not hearing a ton from other councillors, ready to take that step themselves, or at least not ready to be public about it.
With regards to the Integrity Commissioner, do we have an approximate ETA of when we could hear some results, whether or not the investigation is going to happen, and then what will come of the investigation? How long of a timeline are we looking at there? Because again, next year we go back to the polls, municipal election happening. So just wondering about a timeline for that.
For sure. Unfortunately, those things take a little bit of time. I think we'd be expecting a couple of months for sure. If the Integrity Commissioner decides that there isn't a problem here, or that he doesn't believe he should investigate or launch an inquiry, that would obviously be a much shorter time frame. But typically, I think it's a period of about 20 days, even in that initial scenario, where the Integrity Commissioner and London's Integrity Commissioner is a Goderich lawyer by the name of Gregory Stewart. So he has about 20 days to kind of weigh this up, decide what he needs to do, and if there's an investigation that he launches, then there's that back and forth between the person who filed the complaint, Mayor Holder, the person involved or named in the complaint, Councillor Van Holst, and kind of that back and forth between them, and then even a couple months after that for the Integrity Commissioner to make his decision, to look at the evidence and gather that and make a call there. So I think realistically, we're going to be looking into 2022 already to get an answer, especially if there's a report back to council recommending some kind of action or this suspension of pay for up to 3 months. So it could be a bit of a long road, but hopefully we'll be in before that nomination period, which opens May 1st for the municipal election. I would anticipate that you'd have an answer to council before that time. But as you say, it's getting pretty close. It's basically a year away. And so we're going to get into silly season really soon if we're not already there over the last few weeks.
I'm going to start that hashtag on Twitter every time something comes up about council. Silly season. Love it.
Yeah, silly season is here. Oh man, I think it's only going to get worse in the next year, but lots for us to talk about, lots for me to write about, and hopefully lots to keep Londoners paying attention, I guess. In the good ways, we hope, though.
Absolutely. They definitely have their hands full. And again, not that I wish turmoil on anybody, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this kind of continues to unfold. So Megan, thank you so much for your time and your insight today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to a follow-up because again, this is another story we're definitely going to have to keep eyes and ears on. Don't forget, tons of amazing stories. There are really good things also happening in the City of London. So head over to lfpress.com or read about it in the pages of the London Free Press. Thank you for joining us today. We will be back again next Thursday with another edition of the LF Press podcast. Until then, stay well.